Good to have you guys again here for the little things that matter most. I am Jake Stanley, your host, and today's guest, my friend from England, all the way from England, Ashley. Hey, bud. How you doing,
What's
man?
up? I'm good, mate. How are you?
Great, great.
Is that a
Yeah.
super tramp you've got on in the background there?
You know what? It is. And I'm in a coffee shop, so it's like it
Oh,
knows
you
what I
are, right?
want. It
Yeah.
knows what I want.
I thought you were at home. It looks, looking in the background there, it looks like
It's like a
it's,
surf vibe.
all right, yeah. That makes more sense. See, I could just see like clothes and stuff hanging up. And I thought that's just how you keep your clothes at home.
Yeah.
So this guy's got a
How-
lot of clothes. And he has like the same t-shirt 8 times. Weird. What is he, a cartoon character?
Well, you got to keep them fresh, man. You got to keep them fresh. So, like right now in England, I think there's a 5 hour difference. So,
Yeah, so it's nearly 10 o'clock. No, it's 20 past 10 right now, so yeah,
oh, nice.
PM.
And it's like a real chill time of the evening.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your thing? What do you do in the evening? You just kind of chill out.
Yeah, for the most part, just sort of, watch TV or something like that. Yeah, I wish I could tell you there's something more interesting going on, but 9 times out of 10, it's watching a bit of TV. So, yeah. And tonight, that's pretty much what I'm doing. Well, outside of this, of course. So, yeah.
Nice, but I mean, hey, whatever works, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's easy chilling, isn't it? So spend the day in front of a screen and then spend the night in front of a screen for a break. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I've never really thought about it, but this is my life.
Well, hey, everybody seems to get sometimes in like for some people, they can get in a rut. For other people, they can just get into a habit of things. I mean, life comes at us fast, so I don't know. What's your experience with that? Do you find that at times you can get in a rut?
I would probably say no more or no less than anyone else. I suppose, yeah. What I would say about that kind of thing, from my experience of avoiding being in that or recognizing being in that sort of situation, a rut, would be to be self-aware, really, and have your standards and goals and that kind of thing. So then you've got something to benchmark it against to identify that you are in a rut and that's not where you want to be. Knowing where you want to be is a great way to identify that where you currently are is not where you want to be. So yeah, I would just say having certain rituals and having self-awareness as well and discipline to not just vegetate in front of the TV, for example. So
don't pull your card like that. It happens at times, and it's good. Actually, it can be being self-aware, like you said, being self-aware is important. So,
yeah,
most
for
definitely. Sure. Now, as this whole last couple of years has been, it's kind of thrown people for a loop, I guess. But others, it's actually made them better. Like like in adversity, it's like a refinement for some people. And so, in particular, in your personal life, there's been some things throughout your life has happened. Is there anything in particular that you find that has been something that had been a struggle, but it's something that you've gotten through or are currently getting through?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say collectively, with it being the way it's been, using the C word, but not that C word that used to offend so many people or still does, a different C word that actually equally offends people. But that has certainly thrown everything up in the air for a lot of people, whether it be relationships, business, just living for some in fear and some living in frustration, depending on which side of the fence you are with your beliefs towards all that sort of stuff. I would say, for me personally, yeah, I've had my struggles with that. Business was definitely affected. The dynamic of just living life in general, as a lot of us had to live a much more isolated life, that was certainly very difficult. And certainly you strengthen the connections digitally, for example, using social media, I guess, like something that we all vilify a lot. And we sort of love to hate social media, but sometimes, and certainly in them situations where you weren't, in some cases, legally allowed to go out and see people in person, social media was sort of a lifeline. So I would say I've definitely built and nurtured connections more so like that instead of the way I would have classically done it to the people I could reach out and touch physically. So yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of change and a lot of growing and a lot of adapting and diversifying. And yeah, like personally for me, there's been the sort of breakdown of a relationship and the growth of a new one. I won't go into too much detail on that, but personally, yeah, that as you can imagine presents a lot of struggles. And when you've got that stacked on top of the other stuff that we're all experiencing together. Yeah, it's not been easy, but sometimes as well, you seek comfort in you're not the only one going through it. There was a very much we're all in it together in a sense, regardless of what your beliefs were towards that whole thing. One thing you couldn't deny, well, we're all suffering the same thing. We all just want to live. We all want to be free, and we all want to do what we want to do. We don't want to be told what to do. So I think in some ways you could kind of relate to people you didn't even know, because one thing you had in common was we're all in this thing, this mess, I suppose. So yeah, that's kind of been my take on the past couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned that you didn't want to get into detail, and that's totally cool. But like for example, uh, and so like the looking for the positive things. See, it's
Mm-hmm.
not focusing on the problem or the issue. Um, but you mentioned a breakdown of one and the beginning of another, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm sure that is definitely being a positive thing. The buildup of another. Um, what is the thing that has helped you get through, other than the actual buildup of another one?
Mm-hmm.
If anything, maybe something somebody said or did, or is there anything in particular that helped you instrumentally to
Yeah.
to stay positive and
So
get through
yeah,
it?
I'd say the breakdown of something and the growth of something different is very much like the sort of the yin and yang, really. There's a good and a bad, and I think in life, we always have this for one action there's a reaction, and there's always a balance. There's good and there's evil, and so on and so forth. There's black and there's white, and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, as much as going through anything that breaks down is whether the reasons for that are just or whether there's positive reasons as to why that should. Nonetheless, it's still a difficult thing to overcome and to get through and to re-identify yourself. Basically, one minute you're this and then you're that. Having the focus on something positive that is then growing into something new and flourishing into this beautiful thing, a different thing, a new chapter, and all the rest is lovely. I would say it's not something that you would want to use as a means to get you through the bad stuff, because then that falls into the rebound region. You don't want to do
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And I think it's very important to not allow any relationship to be that for you. And in my case, it definitely wasn't. I always made sure I didn't blur those lines, because I wouldn't ever want to devalue a relationship to say it's only there for convenience to repair. So I wouldn't say that was ever that, although the connection with the person who happens to be the person I'm in a relationship was definitely worth its weight in gold. And times I could not have gone through certain times, moments, and situations without that person. Um, Beyond that, I think it's for me personally, if we're looking at specific things that I actually did, fitness. Yeah, always has been a crutch for me. That's always been my coping mechanism, my antidepressant, if you will. And I find it very effective, certainly for me. So yeah, dig once they reopen them. That is, I definitely dug back into there and got my money's worth from a gym membership. But I think it was sort of to begin with, I've tried it both ways. I went through a phase of shutting everyone and everything out, just didn't want to know from anyone, didn't want them to know my story. I'll stay hidden and all the rest of it, because then you don't have to explain anything. And then you get to a point where in my case, I accidentally bumped into a friend when I was out cycling one day. And he was just like, hey, don't be a stranger. And we got chatting. And I was like, hey, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I know, I'll let someone else in and someone else. And before you know it, you let all the numbers back in. And that was the best thing, I would say. So I would
Hmm.
say my experience of going through sort of adverse times, I've done it alone and I've done it with people. And it was always better and easier to do it with people. But then again, maybe it's because I allowed them in at the time when it was
Hmm.
right to do it, because I'd dealt with some shit basically, and then I was
Hmm.
ready to be the kind of person who would be welcoming any advice or just general chit chat that people were willing to sort of have with me. So um, yeah, I think that's how I would answer that one anyway.
Yeah, the timing had to be right, though, right?
I'd say so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think anything that you go through, any kind of grief, any kind of situational thing that's difficult, you go through phases. It's a process, and you need to be ready for that process, because it doesn't matter if you've got the best person in the world in front of you giving you the best possible advice, or even giving you the best offers for something that might be pleasurable for you to do a day out, or whatever. If you are not in the right place, it does not matter, because you don't want to know, because that's not what your life is missing. That's not what's going to be the cure. It'd be like taking a headache pill when you've got a sore ankle. It just doesn't work. So, and I think, yeah, timing is everything. You could say that about so many things in life. Like, the timing has to be right. And I would say that for me, in my experience, it's just a process. But yeah, moral of the story for me is people people are awesome. And yeah, there's a lot of bad things you could attribute to people. As I said, the balance, the good and the evil, and everything else. But the best that people have to offer, if you welcome that into your life, you are rich with love and connections and support systems. And in my experience, them relationships have always been just crucial. And the worst thing that you could do is shut those out, because you never know, you might shut them out so much that you never get them back. And
Right.
you know,
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's easy to shut it out.
mm-hmm.
So easy to
Yeah,
shut it out. I mean, I personally can even attest to that feeling of not really needing outside interaction.
mm-hmm.
Um, and there's been a particular time as well in my life. So it's like it's almost it's not natural to shut people out. Actually, I think we're made to want to form relationships with people. So it's actually
I think
going
so.
against the grain.
Mm-hmm. I think it is, and I think sometimes the worst thing you can do is, it's quite common. So many people say, "I've said it." Things like, "Oh, I hate people," or "Oh, I'm just a bit of a loner," or I'm a recluse. And I think if you say these things all the time, you then start believing it, and then you start acting up to the labels that you've given yourself as well. And
Hmm.
again, I think it's quite dangerous to do that. It's cool to say I hate people. I mean, so many people do it. It's kind of funny. It's a bit tongue in cheek,
Yeah.
but if you really start believing that and then thinking, well, there's a reason for that, because I hate people because people are hateable. They only bring negativity into my
Hmm.
life. You then
Hmm.
shut out some negative people, but you shut out some incredible people as well. And then you are left with just the mind, which can be your own worst enemy as well. It can tell you the worst things that anyone could ever say to you.
Yeah.
And you can't exactly shut the door on it and say, I'm not listening. It's right there. It follows you wherever you go. So sometimes outside influence can say things that the mind isn't thinking about, which can jolt you out of a certain, funk, or a bit of a rut that you might find yourself in.
Yeah. Well,
So,
you that's a good breakdown of it all. I mean, really. I mean, that's sometimes people just can't put it in words. You know.
no, no, I
So
think
so
I think a lot of like experience, self-reflection, meditating, and things like that. You kind of start to, the penny drops a little bit, and you start seeing things in a different way. And sometimes it is you've got to experience bad to appreciate good as well, I think.
hmm. Well, you most definitely will appreciate good once you've gone through some really hard times, for sure. I
Mm-hmm.
totally agree with that. Yeah, I mean, that's just it shows that you've just by what you've said, you've shown that you're that type of person that does a lot of thinking, does a lot of meditation, self awareness checks, and whatnot. Um, Not to say it's been smooth sailing.
Nope.
As, I mean, no, nobody can say they've got a smooth sail
No.
through the ocean of life, if you
Mm-mm.
will. But
No.
it's my turn for an analogy. There you
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
go.
I
You're
like
really good.
it. Yeah.
You're really good with analogies. Uh, but you know, it's don't go it alone.
Yeah.
You
No, I
know,
would completely endorse that sort of way of thinking. You know,
got to
because
have a crew.
you do, yeah. And if you do use the analogy of plain sailing and on the ship, you know, if you had a boat, a vessel that's big enough, you would need more than one person in order to steady that ship and keep it on course. And if you do apply that to your life and think that, you know, life is this boat, so I have to have my key people, my crew, with me in order to get from A to B, to get to that island or whatever, then you really do need them. And everyone is equally important, because without one of them people, it fails,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all very well and good having the captain who's the best at sort of steering the ship, but if someone isn't sort of, I don't know the terminology, but you know, if they don't like have the sail up, for example, if they've dropped
Okay,
the
yeah.
sail, or
Mm-hmm.
if they're not sort of pointing it in the right direction, then it doesn't matter how good he is, because it goes, so everyone has their place really, and their
Mm-hmm.
level of importance. And I think it's I think sometimes as well, you don't want to just say, well, I've got a best friend, um, so it's fine, but you need that other person. Maybe you need your dad or your mum or your auntie, uncle, or just an acquaintance. And I think collaboratively, you've got this sort of superpower
Right.
that can help you. And the worst thing you can do is to think that you're perfect. I've got this. I can do everyone's job. I'll just run around like a headless chicken, keeping this boat on course. But you probably end up going round in circles. To be honest with you, stuck in the storm,
Well,
in the eye of the storm.
you said, you know, we can't go thinking we're perfect. I might have to take this outside. But vacuum cleaner. Um, but you know, and I don't think if we can take that a little further. Hold that thought. There we
There
go.
it is.
So it's a small scarf. It took like 30
It's
seconds.
not that loud for me, to be honest with you.
It's crazy. Like I told you, I had the seagulls the other day.
Yeah, yeah.
They were working on this boat dock. Like, woo, woo. I'm like,
Well, this is probably not that bad compared to the others. It's not that invasive.
that's true. That's true. I'm like counting. She's like one carpet. It's done. Okay, moving on to the second one. Um, yeah, I think. Is he done?
There we go.
I think he's done. All right. So yeah, well, what you said was that people might think, well, I'm perfect, I can do it. Well, that's one way of putting it. I feel most people just that self confidence.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so well, like self confidence or cockiness, whatever you want to call it. And it's just like where you think you're above needing outside help,
Mm-hmm.
from a friend or a family member. So, I mean, what would you say is the one way to make sure you don't get in that mindset where it's just me and I'm good?
I would say that sometimes denial and vulnerability can be confused with arrogance and overconfidence. I don't think it's often that someone is overly confident or even arrogant, thinking that they've got this and they don't need anyone else. I think sometimes it's self-preservation. Sometimes it's not wanting to be vulnerable, and just being in denial. Because then to admit that you need someone is almost admitting that you have a problem in the first place, which a lot of us don't want to do, because that breathes life into it, and then means if there's a problem and I've acknowledged it, I have to do something about it. But maybe I don't have the strength, maybe I don't have the inclination to do anything about it right now. So again, I think without sounding like a broken record, I think it brings it back to that self-awareness, really, that you need to
Mm-hmm.
look inside yourself and have this awareness and benchmark yourself against how, like, the best time in your life, or the time when you felt most rounded and good and everything. How does who you are today compare to that person? And would you rather be that person than the person you are today? And what do you think it would take to get to being like that guy, sort of thing, rather than being like the guy down the street, the guy on TV, like the best version of you who you've previously been? Because, you know, if we've gone through bad times, we've also gone through good times. So we know that there was a time that we were better than we currently are. And I think it's always
Right.
best to compare yourself to you and try and get back to that point where you were most happy, because I bet in your life you've been 10 versions of yourself or more. So pick a version. Which one was best? I think like an outfit, you know, you try on different ones and you've tried on different versions of yourself.
Right.
And then you think which one was most authentic, which one was the easiest to do. Um, and then I think it's a place trying to get back to that point really. And then, you know, maybe it'd be at the time when I was at my best, I had 20 people around me all the time or something like that, you know. So now I need to build bridges, rekindle
Mm-hmm.
old connections and things like that. Because I think a lot of the time it's you've gone through some shit and you've shut yourself off from
Right.
people, and it's getting them back. But yeah, I would say it isn't sort of arrogance or overconfidence. I would say sometimes it's just denial. You know, you have to look and say, this isn't right. I'm better than this. I was better than this. I need to get back to that again, you know?
Well, that's a great assertion, and it shows that it reflects how much thought you've given it and whatnot. Yeah. So, all right, I'm gonna get out too. Thank you. Yeah.
They
No,
shouldn't shop.
they are. Hold on. So I take
Oh,
it. I take it as a no. Well, just end it kind of like this. So, um, yeah, but that's really awesome that you've been able to yourself to kind of identify with the areas that you can improve on. You're able to see what you can work on, and you sounds like you're doing that, and it sounds like you're much happier for it. And it's awesome to have an opportunity to be able to talk with you about it.
yeah, and you know, I appreciate you know, you asking me, finding me someone you deem interesting enough to actually want to speak to and record it on here. But yeah, you know, I think back to the timing thing. You asked me to do this 2 months ago. I wouldn't have wanted to be honest with you. Um,
Hmm.
but now, you know, I'm happy enough to have that conversation, this conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to do it, and now everybody has a chance to hear a little bit about uh, the positive things, the little
Hmm.
things that matter the most.
Yeah,
And so, thanks so much, Ash.
yeah. Cheers, mate.